In the eyes of outsiders, Willow and I had a happy family and a lovely daughter. Even I believed that we would live like this happily for the rest of our lives. However, 7 years into our marriage, my wife grew more and more resistant to my touch. She even messaged her best friend Maria and asked, "What should I do if physical disgust and financial affection start to conflict?" Until the childhood friend she had always secretly loved, Makoto, returned to the country. 1 month. It only took 1 month, and I became a complete joke. When Makoto came back, Willow was the one who went to pick him up at the airport. That night, she spent the whole night partying with him at a hotel. She didn't tell me, on the phone. She only said there was an emergency surgery at the hospital, and that she wouldn't be coming home tonight. Chapter 1. I answered with a simple okay, reminding her to take care of herself and not work too hard. After hanging up, I finished telling Emma her bedtime story. She hugged her little teddy bear and quickly fell asleep. But in the middle of the night, Emma's faint crying woke me up. I reached out and touched her forehead. It was burning hot. The red column on the thermometer stopped steadily at 39.2 degrees Celsius. My chest tightened instantly, and I immediately called Willow. The first time, after a long ringing tone, no one answered. The second time, it rang twice before the call was abruptly hung up. I didn't dare waste another second, wrapping the feverish, half-conscious Emma tightly in a blanket. I grabbed the car keys and rushed toward the City First Hospital, where Willow worked. The emergency hall at midnight was filled with the mixed smell of disinfectant and anxiety, making it hard to breathe. Holding the drowsy Emma, I queued, registered, paid the fees, and ran up and down the cold corridors. Emma whimpered uncomfortably in my arms. Her little face was burning red, and she unconsciously murmured, calling for her mother. Every word felt like a red-hot needle piercing my heart. At the corner of the corridor leading to the laboratory, I ran into Dr. Tang from Willow's department. He had just come out of surgery and looked exhausted. When he saw me, he paused in surprise. "George, it's so late, bringing Emma here to see a doctor." "The child has a high fever," I said, shifting slightly so he could see the limp Emma in my arms. "Oh dear, why didn't you call Willow?" Dr. Tang looked puzzled. "She took the day off today and is at home taking care of the child." My footsteps froze instantly. It felt as if all the noise around me had suddenly been sucked away. I could only hear the sound of my own blood rushing to my head. "She has the day off today." My voice sounded frighteningly dry. Dr. Tang nodded. "Yeah, she asked the director for several days off. Said she had something important to deal with." "You didn't know?" After saying that, his phone rang, and he hurried away while answering it. I stood there alone, holding Emma. The window at the end of the corridor hadn't been closed. The freezing winter wind rushed into my collar, the chill drilling from my skin straight into my bones. Looking down at my daughter, whose little face was flushed from the fever, the whole situation suddenly felt absurd and ridiculous. Her mother had taken several days off to accompany a very important friend. Meanwhile, her daughter had a 39-degree fever, and the call from her husband had been hung up without hesitation. At 3 in the morning, I carried Emma, who had just finished her 4-drip, back home. The house was silent and empty. My daughter fell asleep, but I couldn't. I picked up my phone and started scrolling through short videos. A welcoming party that lively was bound to appear online. Someone would always upload videos to show off. Her best friend, Makoto's friends, even random strangers, and that was how. On the short video app, I ended up seeing more than a dozen different camera angles of the same event. Big data is amazing. It somehow knew my wife was hosting a welcome party for a crush, so it thoughtfully pushed the videos directly to me. The first video was posted by Willow's best friend. The caption read, "My bestie deserves happiness forever." In the video, Willow wore a champagne-colored dress I had never seen before. She smiled brightly and beautifully, affectionately picking food for Makoto. The dress was expensive and revealing. The back was cut all the way down to her waist. She had never worn anything like that in front of me. Expressionless, I swiped past it. Not long after, another video appeared. This one was filmed by one of Makoto's friends. The camera was openly focused on the two of them, and the background music was "Today You Will Marry Me." Willow held up a glass of wine. Her cheeks slightly flushed. She tilted her head up and gazed at Makoto. That look, focused, fascinated, was also something I had never seen before. Chapter 2. Dawn was just beginning to break. I changed the cold towel on Emma's forehead. I hadn't slept all night. The sound of a key turning in the lock was especially harsh in the silence of the house. The door opened. Willow walked in. Or rather, the woman wearing the champagne-colored dress walked in. The dress that had looked so dazzling in the videos was now wrinkled and clinging to her body, the hem stained with unknown drops of alcohol. A strong smell rushed in before she even stepped fully inside, a mixture of alcohol and an unfamiliar cologne. It wasn't my scent, and it certainly wasn't the scent of this home. She finally noticed me sitting in the shadow of the sofa. Her steps halted. Her eyes instinctively avoided mine. Drifting toward the corner where a pot of pothos she had nearly killed sat by the wall. The designer handbag in her hand was tossed casually onto the cabinet with a dull thud. She said, "Last night. I actually meant to tell you." Her voice was soft, hoarse from drinking, with a trace of guilt she couldn't quite hide. I didn't speak. I just looked at her quietly. The longer I looked, the more uncomfortable she became. She reached up to brush back her hair and spoke again. There was a last-minute department dinner. The director was there too, so it wasn't easy to refuse, and my phone just happened to run out of battery. She began weaving a lie skillfully, a lie that sounded reasonably believable. In the past, I might have believed her. Unfortunately, last night big data gave me a very vivid lesson. I picked up the bottle of children's fever medicine on the coffee table and shook it lightly. The liquid inside sloshed clearly. Emma's fever reached 39.2 degrees Celsius last night. My voice was calm, but it fell like a stone into still water. Willow's expression changed instantly. She hurried toward me, her voice anxious. "What about now? Has the fever gone down? Why didn't you call me?" That accusation really deserved the award for best joke of the year. I laughed. I truly found it funny. My chest even trembled with it. I did call. I picked up my phone, opened the call log, and turned the screen toward her. The first call, you didn't answer. The second call, you hung up. The cold glow of the screen illuminated her face. The motherly concern she had just shown froze instantly. She opened her mouth, as if to explain something, but not a single word came out. "That's true," I continued calmly. "After all, your best friend wishes you happiness forever." I slowly pulled the phone back, repeating word by word the caption from her friend's video. Willow Lu's pupils suddenly shrank. I didn't give her time to react and continued. "Dr. Lu, you look really beautiful in that dress. Makoto's friend has good taste too. That song he used for you too, 'Today You Will Marry Me,' very fitting." My tone was calm, like discussing the weather, but with every word, the color drained further from her face. "And one more thing. You clearly took several days off, yet you told me you were working overtime at the hospital. Who exactly were you trying to fool?" She looked at me, her lips trembling. In those eyes I had once been obsessed with, panic finally appeared. How do you know? How do I know?" I stood up and walked over to her. I was a head taller, and my shadow completely enveloped her. Lowering my head, I leaned close to her ear and spoke in a voice only the two of us could hear. "I just want to ask, when I made that second call, the one you hung up without hesitation, was Makoto's hand on your waist, or on your shoulder?" "You're talking nonsense. Makoto and I are completely innocent." She blurted. "That call, I just didn't hear it." I laughed. "Innocent? Didn't hear it?" With a soft chuckle, I slid my phone onto the coffee table in front of her. On the screen, a high-definition video was looping. Chapter 3. In the video, she smiled sweetly as she handed Makoto a glass of wine. When she leaned forward slightly, the neckline of her dress revealed more than it should, and Makoto's gaze happened to linger there. "Is it because even you think this whole thing is dirty?" I said slowly, standing up and looking down at her, "that you need to come up with so many excuses to wipe it clean? Willow, let me remind you of something. We are married. I am your husband. Keeping a proper distance from your old flame is the most basic respect you can show this marriage." Willow looked displeased. "See, this is exactly your reaction. That's why it was right not to tell you. Makoto and I have nothing going on." "Nothing," I repeated, as if hearing the biggest joke in the world. "Since when did City First Hospital start a new service? Working overtime now includes hosting welcome parties. The chief surgeon has to personally drink with the guest and stay overnight at a hotel." I paused before adding coldly, "Next time, should we just move the patient to a karaoke bar and hold the consultation there?" "George, how dare you humiliate me like this?" Willow exploded instantly, anger and humiliation burning in her eyes. "I'm just stating facts." I picked up my phone, unlocked it in front of her, and calmly opened my contacts. "How about this? Let's be fair. Tonight I'll invite one of my junior classmates from university out for drinks. We'll talk about life and dreams. She just got divorced recently and is in a bad mood, so I should keep her company." I paused and looked up at her. My face carried no warmth. "And if I happen to drink too much, maybe I'll book a hotel room and stay the night. Don't worry," I continued lightly. "I'll remind you too, don't overthink it. We're innocent." "George, you wouldn't dare." I let out a cold laugh. My finger hovered over the name of that junior classmate. "You can see for yourself whether I dare." After that argument, one that could only be described as a farce, Willow behaved herself for 2 days. She started coming home on time. She even took the initiative to bathe Emma and read her bedtime stories. She even did the dishes once, something almost unheard of. Watching her clumsy figure moving around the kitchen, I almost believed my firm attitude had worked. Maybe our family could still be saved. But the good days didn't last long. On the 3rd day, she started coming home late again. On the 5th day, She didn't come home at all. The excuses were the same old ones. The hospital is busy. There's surgery. There's a department dinner. I didn't argue with her again. Nor did I question her. Like an experienced farmer watching weeds sprout again and again in the same field, I was already too tired to pull them out one by one. Instead, I began to wonder whether it might be easier to simply change the field entirely. That night, after finishing Emma's bedtime story, the little girl wrapped her arms around my neck and asked in her soft voice, "Daddy, why isn't Mommy home yet?" She promised she would go to the sports day with Emma. My heart tightened. The kindergarten's parent-child sports day was the day after tomorrow. The teacher had specifically said both parents needed to attend. I gently stroked Emma's head, picked up my phone, and opened Willow's chat. I sent her a message. "Emma's sports day is the day after tomorrow. You promised you would go. Remember to come home early." After a long time, she replied with just one word, "Okay." I stared at that lonely "okay" on the screen, feeling almost nothing. The night before the sports day arrived, the entrance hallway was still empty. Emma ran out of her room again and again, standing on tiptoe to look toward the door, only to be disappointed each time. "Daddy, did Mommy get lost? Is Mommy saving a very important patient? Does Mommy not want Emma anymore?" Children's innocent questions can sometimes cut the deepest. At 10 that night, Emma finally cried herself to sleep, sobbing quietly in my arms. I carried her back to her room and tucked the blanket around her. My phone screen lit up. It was a call from Willow. I stepped onto the balcony, closed the door behind me, and answered. "I can't come back tonight," she said softly. In the background, faint music and noisy voices could be heard. I didn't speak. I waited for her to continue. "There's an emergency surgery at the hospital. I'm the lead surgeon, so I can't leave. It will probably last all night. Tomorrow morning I'll go directly to the kindergarten to meet you and Emma." Chapter 4. Another surgery. There must be a lot of patients at City First Hospital, so many that she, a mere attending physician, seems to live at the hospital every single day. "Got it," I said calmly. "What surgery?" There was a noticeable pause on her end, as if she hadn't expected me to ask for details. Then she said, "A perforated acute appendicitis case. It's rather complicated." "Oh," I responded. "Then go ahead and get busy. Be careful." I hung up the phone immediately. Then I opened my social media feed and started scrolling down out of habit. Suddenly, my finger stopped. A friend of Makoto's, someone I had never added, but whose posts I could see because we had mutual friends, had posted a video at 9:30 p.m. In a birthday party room filled with dazzling lights. A group of people surrounded a huge cake. Makoto sat at the center of attention, smiling brightly as he made a wish. And my wife, the one who was supposedly standing at an operating table saving a patient with a perforated appendix, Dr. Liu, was standing right beside Makoto. With a look of admiration on her face, she was leading the group in singing the birthday song, clapping more enthusiastically than anyone else. She was wearing a white knitted sweater today, which made her look especially gentle. That focused gaze, that radiant smile. It was completely different from the wife in my memory, the one wearing a white coat, saving lives. Expressionless, I took a screenshot. Less than 2 minutes later, when I refreshed the feed again, the post had already disappeared, deleted very quickly. Unfortunately for them, it was too late. I stared at the screenshot on my phone. In the picture, Willow's head leaned slightly toward Makoto's shoulder, her face filled with happiness. At that moment, I suddenly felt like I had been treated as a fool. She wasn't performing surgery. She was celebrating her god's birthday. I took a deep breath. The cold air filled my lungs, but it couldn't suppress the fire boiling inside me. I opened my phone gallery. The fresh screenshot, along with the screenshots from the earlier videos, were all placed into a newly created folder. The name of the folder was simple: Evidence. At the sports day registration area, other children were clinging to their parents. Only Emma stood there with a small frown, clutching the corner of my shirt. The kindergarten loudspeakers kept playing cheerful marching music. I crouched down and straightened the little number tag pinned to her chest. "Emma, are you ready? Daddy will help you in first place today." Emma nodded hard, but the disappointment in her big eyes couldn't be hidden. "Will Mommy come?" I paused for a moment before gently patting her head. "Mommy is fighting monsters right now. Let's compete first. If we win the gold medal, she'll come." Emma and I won first place in the three-legged race. The little girl had a shiny plastic medal hanging around her neck and was invited by the teacher to go on stage and say a few words. Holding the microphone, her face turned bright red, but her voice was loud and clear. "I'm very happy today. The thing I most want to tell Mommy is, next time you must come with me. I miss you very much." A wave of kind applause rose from the crowd. I stood among the people, watching my daughter on stage. Something felt stuck in my chest. A complete family is indeed very important to a child. Important enough that I should endure all of this. At that moment, a familiar figure appeared at the entrance of the field. Willow had arrived late. She only caught sight of Emma walking off the stage. Today she was dressed casually, showing no signs of exhaustion from a night-long surgery. Her makeup, however, was rather delicate. "Mommy." The moment Emma saw her, tears burst out instantly. She ran over on her short little legs and hugged Willow's thigh tightly, crying so hard she could barely breathe. Willow seemed somewhat at a loss. She crouched down and hugged Emma, awkwardly trying to comfort her. I walked over and said calmly, "Let's find somewhere to eat first. Buy Emma a gift and cheer her up." Willow nodded in agreement. In the restaurant, Emma had just calmed down when Willow's phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID. Her expression immediately became unnatural. Holding the phone, she walked off to the side. When she returned, an apologetic expression hung on her face. "George, I'm sorry. There's a car accident patient at the hospital. Severe bleeding. They urgently need surgery. I have to go back." Chapter 5. Another surgery. Her surgeries were more punctual than food delivery orders. I nodded without looking at her and said calmly, "Got it. Then go ahead. The patient comes first." She seemed surprised that I agreed so easily. She froze for a moment, then hurriedly grabbed her bag, kissed Emma on the cheek, and left. Watching her disappearing figure, I took out my phone and made a call. "Hey, David." "Busy." David was my college classmate. He worked in the general surgery department of City First Hospital, right next to Willow's department. He replied, "Not busy. Just finished a surgery. What's up?" "Nothing much. Just asking, did your hospital receive a car accident patient with severe bleeding?" My wife said the situation was pretty serious. There was a 2-second silence on the other end. David's voice sounded a little strange. "A car accident? No. And besides, didn't Willow take leave today? I saw her leave application this morning." "I see." I smiled slightly. "Then maybe I heard wrong." "George, something's off with you," David said, his curiosity clearly ignited. "Did something happen between you and Willow? I've heard people in the department talking. She's been getting really close with that newly returned overseas doctor, Makoto. They eat lunch together almost every day. You should keep an eye on that." The more he spoke, the angrier he became. "Damn it. What kind of situation is this? Just wait. I'll keep an eye out for you. If I see those two getting cozy again, I'll take pictures and send them straight to you." After hanging up, I looked down at the plate in front of me. Suddenly, I had no appetite at all. Not long after Emma and I finished eating, my phone chimed. It was a photo from David. The background was a high-end Western restaurant. Willow and Makoto were sitting close together, their heads nearly touching as they leaned in to look at something on a phone. Both of them were smiling brightly. Willow was still wearing the same casual outfit she had on that morning. So this was where her operating room really was. Emma suddenly began crying in my arms again, clutching my clothes and sobbing. Unfortunately, she had seen the photo. Through her tears, she said, "Daddy, Mommy is a bad person. Emma doesn't like Mommy anymore. I don't want her." I held my daughter tightly and gently patted her back. I couldn't say a single word. On my phone screen, the glaring photo was still glowing. I saved it casually and placed it into the folder named Evidence. I had just managed to soothe Emma to sleep when my phone suddenly vibrated on the bedside table. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. For some reason, my heart tightened. My first reaction was that something had happened to Willow. Ironically, when that thought flashed through my mind, there was only surprise, no panic. I answered the call. On the other end was my mother-in-law's anxious voice, trembling with tears. "George, Pablo suddenly fainted. He's at City First Hospital right now. Please come quickly. Willow's phone can't be reached no matter how many times I try." My head buzzed as I jumped out of bed. While changing clothes, I tried to calm her down. "Mom, don't worry." "Which department?" "I'll be there right away." By the time I arrived at the hospital, handling admission procedures, running around paying fees and collecting medicine, contacting doctors, it was already late at night before my father-in-law finally stabilized in the hospital bed. My mother-in-law sat beside the bed with red eyes. She held my hand, looking exhausted and apologetic. "George, you've worked hard again." "Willow, that child." Sigh. "I know things haven't been right between you two lately. Please be patient with her. Whatever problems you have, you should talk openly as husband and wife. Don't keep everything bottled up." I nodded but said nothing. "Talk openly? About what? Should I ask her what brand of cigarettes Makoto smokes? Or ask her whose bed she has been sharing?" Chapter 6. My father-in-law on the hospital bed slowly opened his eyes. His cloudy gaze settled on me. He beckoned me closer. "George, come here." His voice was weak, but his eyes were unusually clear. I bent down beside him. "Don't listen to your mother-in-law meddling," he said after catching his breath. "Willow is my daughter. I know exactly what she's up to before she even makes a move. Her heart has already wandered. I can see it clearly." He paused, a trace of guilt and determination appearing in his eyes. "Back then at that intersection, if you hadn't pushed my wife out of the way, The grass on her grave would already be a meter tall. Our Liu family owes you. If Willow really did something that wronged you, don't worry about us. Do whatever you think is right. I'll support you in this family. And Emma, you must take good care of her. My nose stung, and my eyes grew hot. I nodded heavily. Dad, don't worry. After leaving the hospital, the cold wind cleared my head a little. On the way to pick Emma up from my mother's house, Willow finally called. The moment I answered, her furious voice exploded through the phone. George, you're really something. You went behind my back and complained to my parents. No wonder you were being so agreeable earlier. You were waiting for this moment. How small-minded are you? Your heart must be so dark that everything you see looks dirty. She must have just arrived at the hospital. I could faintly hear my mother-in-law trying to calm her down in the background. Listening to her hysterical accusations, I suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of boredom. I didn't even have the energy to argue with her. So in her mind, staying out all night and lying constantly weren't mistakes, but making her lose face in front of her parents was the real crime. I'm not that free, I replied with those few words calmly and hung up. There was no point communicating with someone who lived entirely in her own world. At the hospital, Willow stared at the phone in her hand after the call was disconnected. She stood there in a daze. Beside her, Willow's mother was so angry that tears streamed down her face. Look at yourself, and you still think you're in the right? A married woman going out every night showing herself everywhere. Who do you think you're fooling? On the hospital bed, Willow's father was breathing heavily with anger. He pointed at her, his hand trembling. You said you were working overtime, didn't you? Which department were you working overtime in? Attending gatherings with Makoto counts as overtime too. Willow's face turned pale. Her lips trembled. Dad, what are you talking about? I'm talking nonsense. Her father sneered. He grabbed the phone from the bedside table and dialed a number right in front of her. Hello, Director Han. This is Willow's father. I need a favor. Please send me Willow's attendance record for this month. Yes, I need it right now. I'd like to see just how much overtime our Dr. Liu has really worked. The color drained completely from Willow's face. She rushed forward, trying to snatch the phone, her voice cracking. Dad, don't call. What are you doing? But the more she tried to stop him, the more Willow's parents' hearts sank. That outstretched hand was like a loud slap across her face, completely shattering the fragile lies she had built. After that day, Willow came home once. She didn't mention her father being hospitalized, nor did she ask about Emma. She simply threw her bag onto the cabinet by the entrance and looked at me coldly. You complained to my parents behind my back. Are you satisfied now? I was sitting on the sofa, peeling an apple for Emma. Hearing her words, I didn't even lift my eyelids. Your dad isn't in good health. Don't anger him again, I said calmly. If something happens to him again, I won't be able to help you. She probably thought I was using her father to pressure her. Her expression darkened even more, but in the end, she didn't say anything. She turned and walked into the bedroom, slamming the door shut behind her. Over the next month or so, Willow came home only a handful of times. Each time she returned, she was like a temporary tenant, always saying she was tired or sleepy. Whenever I tried to talk to her properly, she would pick up her phone or retreat into her room, blocking my words before they could even leave my throat. Her excuse for going out was always the same, working overtime at the hospital. Meanwhile, my phone gradually received dozens of pieces of overtime evidence from David. Sometimes it was a high-end Western restaurant. Willow would be resting her chin in her hand, smiling warmly at Makoto across the table. David would add a caption. Bro, tonight's menu is tomahawk steak. Your wife has a pretty good appetite. Sometimes it was at a concert hall. The two of them would be sitting close together, their heads touching, as if sharing the same pair of earphones. David's commentary would be brief and sharp. High art, refined taste. One by one, I saved every photo. The folder named evidence grew fuller and fuller. Chapter 7. That night, Emma suddenly wouldn't stop crying. She didn't eat a single bite of dinner. Clinging to my neck, she kept calling for her mother again and again, crying until her little face turned purple and her breathing came in broken sobs. I tried to comfort her for a long time, using every trick I could think of, but she still cried until she was almost out of breath. In the end, I had no choice. Looking at my daughter in my arms, exhausted from crying, the last thread inside my heart finally snapped. I grabbed the car keys, wrapped Emma in a thick coat, and drove straight to City First Hospital. When I arrived at Willow's department, the office door was slightly ajar. Warm light spilled out from inside. Holding Emma, I raised my hand to knock, but then I heard Makoto's voice from inside, carrying a teasing warmth. You're just too stubborn. If something's wrong, why didn't you tell me? Then came Willow's voice, soft, with a faint trace of grievance. What's the point of telling you? My chest tightened. Almost unconsciously, I gently pushed the door open. Inside the office, Willow had her back to the door. She and Makoto were embracing each other. Makoto's hand rested on her back, patting her lightly as if comforting a child who had been wronged. The scene looked warm, harmonious. When they heard the door open, they both turned their heads suddenly. The moment Willow saw me, and Emma in my arms, her body stiffened. She instinctively pushed Makoto away. I said nothing. I simply looked at them silently, then gently closed the door again. Sorry for the interruption. The door shut behind me, sealing everything inside. I lowered my head and looked at the daughter in my arms. Her eyes were red as she stared back at me, her small hands clutching my clothes tightly. Emma, I heard my own voice, strangely calm. You might not have a mother soon. Emma didn't fully understand. She asked quietly, Daddy, why was Mommy hugging that uncle? Does she not like Emma anymore, and not like Daddy either? About a minute later, the office door opened. Willow hurried out. There was still panic on her face from being caught, but the first thing she said was a reprimand. George, why didn't you knock before coming in? I ignored her question and looked at her coldly. The way I stared made her uneasy. Her gaze flickered away, forcing an awkward expression. She began to explain. Don't misunderstand. Makoto and I aren't anything. Just now something got stuck on the back of his collar, and I helped him remove it. The excuse was laughably clumsy. I chuckled lightly. Right in front of her, I slowly took out my phone and opened the album named Evidence, sliding to the photo David had sent earlier that afternoon. In the picture, Willow and Makoto were sitting by the window of a cafe. Afternoon sunlight poured over them. Willow was scooping up a bite of cake from her plate and feeding it to Makoto. I turned the screen toward her. My voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear. Really? Then what about this? Did something get stuck on his mouth too? Willow's face, illuminated by the cold glow of the screen, shifted from red to pale, then from pale to green. Before I could say anything else, Makoto had already walked out of the office. He stood beside Willow and naturally placed a hand on her shoulder, assuming the posture of a host. Looking at me, he frowned slightly. Sir, shouldn't you knock before entering someone else's office? That's basic courtesy. He spoke slowly, with a tone of superior judgment. Also, Willow and I are just colleagues. Our relationship is completely innocent. As her husband, instead of caring about her, you come to the hospital to cause trouble. That doesn't seem very appropriate, does it? His words were perfectly composed. He sounded reasonable, while keeping himself completely clean of blame. Suddenly, Emma struggled in my arms. Her small finger pointed at Makoto. With a hoarse voice from crying, she shouted, You're a bad uncle. Give Mommy back to me. The child's sharp voice echoed clearly through the silent corridor. Chapter 8. Emma had seen the photos on my phone more than once. She knew that this man was the reason her mother hadn't come home for so many days. The reason she no longer read her bedtime stories. A crack appeared in Makoto's calm expression. Willow's face, however, darkened completely. She shook off Makoto's hand and strode quickly toward me. There was fire in her eyes, but it wasn't directed at me. It was aimed at the daughter in my arms. Emma, who taught you to speak like that? What nonsense are you saying? Her voice was low, but every word carried sharp blame. Then she raised her head and stared straight at me. George, is this how you teach your daughter? Teaching her to stir up trouble and make things up? She's so young, and she's already learned how to slander adults. You're really something. Looking at the way she tried to twist the situation, I was so angry that I laughed instead. You think I taught her that? I said. Willow, has alcohol soaked your brain? She only says what she sees, and she sees what you do. You're still arguing. Willow's voice suddenly rose, as if my calmness provoked her even more. Right now, take Emma and apologize to Makoto. Apologize? It sounded like the funniest joke of the century. Dr. Liu, I said lightly, are you sure you're not running a fever and talking nonsense? Apologize for what? For seeing her mother shamelessly feeding cake to another man. You. Willow was completely speechless, her face turning the color of liver. She looked at Emma, who was trembling in fear in my arms. The anger and humiliation from having her lies exposed finally found an outlet. Suddenly she raised her hand and swung toward Emma's face. I told you to stop talking nonsense. Today I'm going to teach you a lesson. I had been prepared. I shifted my body and pulled Emma behind me, grabbing Willow's wrist in midair. Her wrist was trapped in my grip, unable to move. Willow, are you crazy? My voice turned cold. You did something wrong, and now you're taking it out on a child. She bit her lip. I'm disciplining my daughter. That's perfectly justified. Her chest rose and fell violently. Being embarrassed in front of Makoto had pushed her into blind rage. She had completely lost control of her words. George, don't think I don't know what you're thinking. You're just upset because I made you lose face. So you're encouraging the child to slander me and come here to cause trouble at my workplace. You just want to ruin my reputation. The more she spoke, the more convinced she became that she was right. Her voice grew sharper and sharper. Those beautiful eyes of hers now contained nothing but twisted anger. Her raised hand came swinging toward Emma's face again without hesitation. At that moment, the string of patience inside me snapped. Just before her palm landed, I raised my arm and blocked her away. Willow lost her balance and staggered backward from the force. Emma trembled violently, her crying turning into frightened whimpers. From that moment on, I knew exactly what decision I needed to make. The things in my hand might not prove that they had shared the same bed, but they were more than enough for a divorce, and for winning custody of my daughter. The next second, smack! A sharp sound exploded through the silent corridor. Time seemed to freeze. Willow covered her face, completely stunned. Her eyes filled with disbelief. The hallway fell silent. Passing nurses, doctors from the neighboring department who had poked their heads out to look. Everyone's gaze converged on the three of us like spotlights. Some people who recognized Dr. Willow Liu began whispering among themselves. Isn't that Dr. Liu's husband, George? He looks pretty gentle. How did it come to him hitting her? Didn't you see? Dr. Liu was about to slap the child. He was protecting her. And that slap just now, wow, that was loud. I told you something was off between those two. They've been eating lunch together every day. A couple of days ago I even saw Dr. Ito giving Dr. Liu flowers. Keep your voice down. This is getting serious. The department director might get involved. Chapter 9. Every one of those whispers felt like a red-hot needle stabbing into Willow's face. The professional image she had always been so proud of was being torn to pieces in the very place she knew best. I shook my slightly numb hand and stared at her, speaking word by word. Willow, ever since Makoto came back, do you even remember what you've been doing? A married woman staying out all night, acting intimate with another man outside. Your daughter had a fever of 39 degrees and you wouldn't answer the phone. Your own father was hospitalized, and you said it was my fault. And now, I took a step forward. You're trying to hit my daughter? You really think I have no temper at all? She covered her face, her voice trembling. You dared to hit me. Makoto, who had been standing nearby, finally reacted. He shouted angrily and grabbed for my collar. What kind of man are you, hitting a woman? I didn't dodge. The moment his hand touched my collar, I lifted my leg and kicked him straight in the stomach. Makoto's refined, scholarly body folded like a broken sack as he flew backward. He slammed into the wall 2 meters away and slid down to the floor, unable to get up for a long time. A collective gasp echoed through the corridor. George, have you gone crazy? Willow screamed and ran toward Makoto, trying to help him up. When she turned to look at me again, her eyes were filled with hatred. Yet she was still defending herself. Makoto and I are innocent. We didn't do anything. Stop slandering me. Innocent. Her stubborn refusal to admit anything made me laugh in disbelief. If you're so upright and clean, then tell me this. At Makoto's birthday party last night, what wish did you make? When you were singing the birthday song for him, you stood closer than his own mother. Was that innocent too? If Makoto's father died tomorrow, would you kneel by the grave and cry just to prove your innocence? My words were blunt and harsh. Willow's face turned red, then pale. The whispers around us grew louder. Someone said quietly, I knew something was off between her and that Dr. Ito. Isn't her husband supposed to be rich? She used to brag about that all the time in the department. Look at that, married to such a good husband and still not satisfied. Look at the child, she's terrified. Willow subconsciously glanced toward Makoto on the floor, hoping he would stand up and support her. But Makoto was curled up in the corner by the wall, one hand clutching his stomach and the other pressing against the ground. His face had turned a dark purple as he gasped for breath, unable to form a complete sentence. The elegant demeanor of an overseas returned elite was nowhere to be seen. Willow's last line of defense collapsed completely. Pointing at me, she cried out in a shrill voice. George, Makoto and I are just normal colleagues, completely innocent. You're slandering me. I want a divorce. I can't live like this for another day. Fine. I looked at her calmly and spoke a single word. Good. If we're divorcing, then let's make everything clear. Let your colleagues judge too. Let them see just how innocent Dr. Liu really is. The moment I finished speaking, the corridor erupted. Doctors and nurses peeking from nearby rooms. Curious patients' families watching the scene. Their voices buzzed like flies. Gazes fell upon Willow's pale face, some curious, some disdainful, and some even amused. An older head nurse stepped forward, trying to mediate. George, this is a hospital. If you have something to say, talk calmly. Don't make a scene here. It's disturbing the patients. Right after that, 2 security guards arrived, holding rubber batons. One of them, who knew me, shouted, George, what are you doing? Leave immediately, or we'll call the police. I ignored them. My eyes remained fixed on Willow. From the backpack I carried, where Emma's water bottle and snacks were kept, I pulled out a thick brown envelope. Then I flung it into the air. Dozens of printed photographs scattered like snowflakes, fluttering down onto Willow's head and shoulders, falling at her feet. Originally, I hadn't wanted to make things known to everyone, but since she refused to show any remorse, there was no reason left to preserve her dignity. After all, these were the evidence I had prepared. Chapter 10. I bent down and picked up one of the photos, holding it up in front of her. June 3rd. Makoto returned to the country. You told me there was a department dinner. This is you having dinner with him. You look very sweet in that smile. I let go. The photo fluttered to the ground. Then I picked up another. July 5th. Emma's kindergarten sports day. You said the hospital had an emergency surgery, but here, you're having a candlelight dinner with him at a Western restaurant. The photo fell again. July 20th. Makoto's birthday. Another surgery. You said, but here you are, in a lavish private room, leading everyone in singing him the birthday song. I kept picking them up, one by one, and throwing them down again. Our wedding anniversary, you said you were on duty. Weekends, you said you were attending academic conferences. Willow, do you even remember all the lies you've told? Finally, I pulled out the last sheet from the envelope. It was a photocopy of Willow's attendance record for the month, something David had managed to obtain. I tossed it onto the pile of photos. Open your eyes and take a good look. These are all your leave records. Tell me, exactly which operating room were you working overtime in? Was Makoto the chief surgeon? Makoto's refined face had already turned the color of pig liver. It seemed he felt his dignity had fallen to the ground along with those photos. With a furious roar, he lunged forward like a madman, trying to grab the papers from the floor. You're slandering us. I was prepared. I stepped aside and kicked the back of his knee. He let out a scream and dropped to one knee. Before he could react, I lifted my leg and delivered a clean, powerful roundhouse kick straight into his ribs. Makoto flew sideways like a shrimp kicked across the floor, crashing into the wall 2 meters away and collapsing, groaning, unable to get up again. I shook my leg and looked at the stunned security guards with a small smile. Then I calmly explained. I was on the track team in high school, learned a bit of kickboxing, enough to deal with someone this week. The 2 guards exchanged glances. When they looked at me again, there was a hint of sympathy in their eyes. They stepped forward and held my arms from both sides, but they didn't use much force. It felt more like they were protecting me. Several hospital administrators arrived after hearing the commotion and immediately began scolding me, telling me not to make the situation bigger. I didn't bother arguing with them. Instead, I pulled out my phone and dialed 110 in front of everyone. Hello, police station. I'd like to report something. City First Hospital, 3rd floor outpatient department. Someone is having an affair and tried to hit a child. I hit him in self-defense. Yes, please come and handle it. Amid everyone's shocked stares, I reached into the deepest pocket of my backpack and took out the final document. I threw it onto Willow. Divorce agreement. I've already signed it. I looked at her. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. Emma stays with me. You're not worthy of being her mother. I spent 24 hours at the police station. Makoto's injury was classified as minor, not enough to constitute criminal liability. I paid 10,000 yuan in compensation and signed a settlement agreement. That was the end of it. My father's car was parked across the street, the hazard lights blinking on and off. He hadn't slept all night. His eyes were filled with red blood vessels. When he saw me come out, he said nothing. He got out of the car, took out a cigarette pack, handed me one, and lit it for me. I took a deep drag. The smoke choked me, making me cough repeatedly until tears filled my eyes. Dad, I asked, where are Mom and Emma? At home, he replied. They just fell asleep. He lit a cigarette for himself. His voice was hoarse, as if it had been scraped by sandpaper. Your mom and I went to the hospital yesterday. The scene, we heard all about it. Later, your father-in-law called me too. I was a little surprised. What did he say? What else could he say? My father exhaled a thick cloud of smoke. The wrinkles between his brows were deep enough to trap a mosquito. He kept apologizing. Said he was sorry to you. Sorry to our Wang family. He said he can't control Willow anymore. Whatever our family decides to do, we should just do it. He won't object. My father threw the cigarette butt to the ground and crushed it under his shoe. This marriage must end. At that moment, the heaviest stone in my heart finally fell away. When I returned to the house Willow and I once shared, I pushed the door open. The house was empty, cold. The air still carried the sickly sweet scent of her perfume. It made me feel nauseous. Maybe that was for the best. I went to the storage room, took out several suitcases, and began packing my things. Chapter 11. I packed Emma's things first. Her little clothes and dresses were folded neatly, sorted one by one. Her favorite rabbit plush toy, the picture books she had to hold before falling asleep, and the crooked family portraits she had drawn. I picked one up. In the drawing, a little girl with pigtails held the hands of a tall father and a beautiful mother. The 3 of them were all smiling widely. Something seemed to block my chest, making it hard to breathe. Then I packed my own things. There wasn't much, just a few changes of clothes, a couple of books, a laptop. It took only a few minutes. After everything was packed, I took the divorce agreement I had prepared long ago from my briefcase and placed it in the most visible spot on the coffee table. My name was already signed clearly on it. Dragging the suitcases behind me, I took one last look at the place I once called home. There was no attachment left. I turned around and closed the door. After moving everything back to my family's old house in Sea City and settling in, I called Alicia, a senior from my university days. She was now one of the city's most well-known divorce lawyers. As soon as the call connected, her brisk laugh came through the phone. Well, George the genius, what kind of wind blew you my way? From your tone, it doesn't sound like good news, it sounds more like you've gotten yourself into trouble. Something like that, I said with a bitter smile. I beat up my wife and the guy she's involved with just got out of the police station. There was a 2-second silence on the other end. Her voice immediately turned serious. Send me your address. I'll come find you. Actually, no, come straight to my law firm. This can't be explained clearly over the phone. In Alicia's office, I sent her the entire folder named evidence, including all the photos and videos inside it. Wearing her gold-rimmed glasses, she reviewed everything quickly. Her fingers clicked rapidly on the mouse as she flipped through the files one by one. The relaxed expression on her face gradually turned serious. Are these enough? I asked. Enough? Alicia looked up and raised an eyebrow. More than enough with what you have here. Her marital infidelity is basically undeniable. And your profession, she paused slightly before continuing, is rather special. When the court considers custody, it will naturally lean toward you. On top of that, she has a record of attempting to hit the child in public. She has absolutely no chance of getting Emma's custody. She leaned back in her chair, behind the lenses. Her eyes carried a sharp confidence. As for property division, she asked, what about your marital assets? The house was fully paid for by me before the marriage, I replied. The car is registered under her name. Our finances are separate. After the marriage, I have a few million in savings. As for her, I'm not sure. I understand. Alicia nodded, a professional cold smile appearing at the corner of her lips. If she signs the agreement willingly and you divorce peacefully, that's the best outcome. But if she refuses and wants to fight in court, I guarantee she won't take a single coin from you except the car she bought herself. With those words, my mind finally settled. The chaos at the hospital was eventually classified as a medical disturbance incident and quietly brushed aside. But privately, the entire City First Hospital was already buzzing with gossip. The pantry, the cafeteria, the duty rooms, anywhere people gathered. There were whispers about Dr. Lou from cardiothoracic surgery and the newly arrived overseas Dr. Ito. Willow had, of course, heard them too. She shut herself inside the guest room of her best friend Maria's house for an entire day. Chapter 12. Maria was Willow's closest friend at the hospital. She worked in the ultrasound department. When she pushed the door open, Willow was sitting on the carpet with 2 empty wine bottles in front of her. George has gone crazy. He's a lunatic, Willow said bitterly. The moment she saw Maria, her eyes turned red. She grabbed Maria's arm as if clutching the last lifeline she had. He hit me at the hospital, in front of so many colleagues. He even coached Emma to accuse me. How could he treat me like this? She loudly listed George's crimes, accusing him of not trusting her. She said George had humiliated her in front of her parents and colleagues. She said George was narrow-minded and making a mountain out of a molehill. Maria simply listened quietly. She neither interrupted nor agreed. When Willow cried until she was exhausted and had nothing left to say, Maria handed her a cup of warm water and asked calmly, "Finished?" Willow froze for a moment and nodded through her sobs. Maria looked straight into her eyes. Then let me ask you something. What exactly are you thinking? Willow blinked, confused. What do you mean? Maria stopped circling around the issue. I mean, are you planning to divorce George and run away happily with Makoto? Or are you planning to cut Makoto off completely and go back home to live your life properly? Willow's crying stopped abruptly. She clearly hadn't expected such a question when she came here seeking comfort. She opened her mouth and after a long pause finally squeezed out, "Makoto and I, we're innocent." Maria suddenly laughed. There was a faint trace of sarcasm in that laugh. Willow, it's one thing to lie to other people, but are you really lying to yourself too? Tell me, what kind of innocent colleague requires you to lie about performing surgery so you can go celebrate his birthday? What kind of innocent colleague leans their heads together while eating until the spoon is practically feeding him? What kind of innocent colleague can call you once and make a mother leave her child behind just to go see him? With each sentence Maria spoke, Willow's face turned a little paler. Last month, Maria continued, how many days did you actually go home? How many overtime shifts did you tell George you worked? Do you really think I'm stupid enough not to check the duty schedules? Maria stood up and looked down at her. Let me be honest. From where I stand, you're enjoying the emotional attention Makoto gives you while still wanting George to provide financial security. And on top of that, you expect him to forgive every lie you tell. Willow, are you still dreaming? Or do you really think every man in the world owes you something? I've wanted to say this for a long time, but you're my best friend. And I thought it was between you and your husband. So I kept quiet. But now look at yourself. You barely recognize who you've become anymore. Maria pointed toward the door. You don't believe me, do you? Fine. Go back to the hospital right now. Grab any colleague you want, from the hospital directors to the cleaning staff, and ask them whether they believe Dr. Liu and Makoto are just innocent colleagues. I didn't. Willow's voice weakened, her confidence fading. You didn't. Maria laughed angrily. Then why did George show up at the hospital? He's a man who values his pride more than anything. If you hadn't pushed him to the limit, do you think he would have done something like that? Willow had no words left. She collapsed on the carpet, her eyes empty. She had come to Maria hoping to find an ally, someone who would join her in criticizing George, the husband who didn't understand her. Instead, Maria had torn apart the mask Willow had always been so proud of. Seeing her lost expression, Maria sighed and delivered the final blow. I heard George already gave you the divorce agreement. To be fair, he's already been more than generous. These past few months, if any other man found out his wife was constantly hanging around another man, ignoring her sick child, things would have ended with a slap long ago. The person who destroyed this family wasn't him. Maria placed a glass of water heavily on the table. The bottom of the glass struck the surface with a dull sound. What exactly is it about Makoto that attracts you? Willow, put your hand on your conscience and tell me, what has George ever done wrong to you? Maria's voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear. You say George doesn't believe you and Makoto are innocent. Even I don't believe it. Willow suddenly raised her head. The tears in her eyes stopped falling. But I really didn't sleep with Makoto. Maria sneered. Does that make a difference? Who would believe that? Chapter 13. Willow couldn't believe it. Maria was her best friend. She had come here seeking comfort, a safe harbor. Yet the way Maria looked at her now was completely unfamiliar, cold, questioning. Maria continued. And now you feel wronged. The whole hospital knows about it. Your daughter had a high fever, and you didn't go home all night because you were out with your innocent colleague. Your daughter had been looking forward to the sports day for days, and you turned around and went to celebrate his birthday instead. Willow, listen to what you've done. Do those things sound like the actions of a mother or a wife? If George were even a little more spineless, you could have betrayed him 100 times over already. He went to the hospital and caused that scene because you pushed him to the limit. I heard he walked in right when you were hugging Makoto, and you still have the nerve to cry. Maria's words humiliated her even more than George's slap. A coldness suddenly spread through Willow's body. She didn't even know where to put her hands. She ran out of Maria's apartment and wandered the streets like a ghost in the night. The cold wind blew against her face, and only then did she realize she hadn't even brought her phone. Her mind was a mess, filled with Maria's words. You enjoy the emotional attention Makoto gives you, while still wanting George to provide financial security. Was that really true? She remembered how every time Makoto asked to see her, she went almost unconsciously. Every time he called, her heart fluttered as she answered. As for George, ever since they got married, every time she saw his name on the phone, she felt an inexplicable irritation. The last time she had called George first was because she had maxed out her credit card. She thought about the divorce agreement. When she received it, she hadn't even looked at it before tearing it up. At the time, she thought, what right did George have to ask for a divorce? Whether this family stayed together or fell apart should be her decision. But now it seemed more like a guilty, desperate attempt to defend herself. She remembered the scene in the hospital corridor, George standing there with Emma protected behind him, and the slap she had raised. The look Emma gave her at that moment was fear. Her daughter was afraid of her. That realization twisted painfully in her chest. Then another image surfaced in her mind, the moment George kicked Makoto across the hallway. What had her reaction been? She had rushed forward, trying to scratch George's face, screaming for him to stop. If the head nurse hadn't grabbed her tightly, she might really have fought with her own husband. For another man, Willow stopped walking. She stood beneath a streetlight, the yellow glow stretching her shadow long and thin. Finally, she had to admit, Maria was right. The person who destroyed this family wasn't George, it was herself. A wave of delayed panic seized her. She started running toward home, stumbling as she went. Her high heels twisted awkwardly beneath her feet. She needed to go home. She had to go home. She wanted to explain everything to George. She and Makoto had never actually slept together. She had only been confused for a while. She would never do it again. She still had a chance. There had to be one. Breathing heavily, she unlocked the door. George? Emma? The house was completely dark. No one answered. She fumbled for the light switch in the hallway. Light flooded the room. The living room was empty. Emma's toy storage box was gone. The shoes George usually wore by the door were gone too. On the coffee table lay a document. The same divorce agreement. Beside it was a note. It was George's handwriting, thin, sharp, decisive. I took Emma with me. I've listed the house with a real estate agent. The car is yours. And don't come looking for us again. She picked up the note and put it down, reading it over and over until she finally confirmed she hadn't misread anything. Once, she had told George that he was the most stubborn man she had ever met. Once he made a decision, even 9 oxen couldn't pull him back. At the time, she had laughed, treating it like a playful comment between lovers. She hadn't expected it to become a prophecy. From the moment of that welcome party, the first lie she told had been like pushing the first domino. From the beginning, when she was nervous and tried hard to explain, to later, when the lies came out of her mouth almost automatically. Chapter 14. Suddenly, the house felt wrong to her. It was too empty, so empty that it made her uneasy. She rushed into Emma's room. The closet door was open, and more than half the clothes inside were gone. Emma's favorite pajamas, the little socks she wore every day, all gone. Even the small teddy bear that Emma hugged so much it had become fuzzy was gone too. Only a few expensive princess dresses remained, the ones Willow had bought on impulse that Emma had worn once or twice. They hung there alone. She ran into the master bedroom and opened the wardrobe. George's side was missing some things too. He had only taken his everyday clothes. The expensive suits and ties she had bought for him were still hanging neatly in place, untouched, as if silently mocking her. At that moment, a sharp fear seized her. She searched frantically around the house, trying to find her phone. Then she remembered, when she ran out of Maria's place, she hadn't taken anything with her. She rushed to the living room and grabbed the landline receiver, her fingers trembling as she dialed Maria's number. "Maria, bring my phone here quickly. Hurry." Maria lived nearby. She arrived in a little over 10 minutes. Seeing Willow's panicked expression, she said nothing and simply handed over the phone. Willow snatched it immediately. The moment the screen lit up, she hurriedly opened her contacts and dialed George's number. A cold mechanical voice answered. "Hello. The number you have dialed does not exist." The number didn't exist. He had cancelled his phone number. Willow's hand trembled, almost dropping the phone. Refusing to give up, she opened the messaging app and sent George a message. "George, come back. Let's talk." A red exclamation mark appeared. It stabbed painfully into her eyes. He had deleted her. Her last hope fell onto her daughter's smartwatch. Her hands shaking, she dialed Emma's number. The phone rang. No one answered. She called again and again, until the automated message informed her that the call would be transferred to voicemail. The phone slipped from her powerless fingers and fell onto the carpet. The screen went dark. Willow collapsed onto the floor. At last, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She threw her arms around Maria, who hadn't left yet, and burst into tears. This time, there was no grievance in her crying, no accusations, only pure despair from being abandoned. Through her sobs, she said, "He doesn't want me anymore. Maria, he really doesn't want me anymore. Even Emma. Emma doesn't want me anymore." Maria looked at her. The anger she had felt earlier was gone, replaced by exhaustion. She bent down, picked up the phone from the floor, and placed it back into Willow's hand. "What's the use of crying?" she said. "Did George disappear from the world or something? Will crying bring him back?" Willow looked up with tear-filled eyes, unable to answer. Maria said coldly, "He's still a living person. It's not like he vanished into thin air. His parents' house, the place he grew up, you know where it is, don't you? Look at yourself right now. If you go there like this, are you planning to argue with him again? Or show Emma just how pathetic her mother is?" Maria paused, her tone softening slightly. "Willow, think this through carefully. First, you have to cut Makoto off completely. If George ever sees even the slightest connection between you two again, don't blame him for being ruthless. Otherwise, you might as well just sign the divorce agreement. Don't drag this out until there's no dignity left between husband and wife. Second, think everything through before you go see him. Figure out where you went wrong first, then apologize. If you go now, you'll only make things worse." Maria's words were like a bucket of ice water poured over her. Willow's crying gradually stopped. She looked at Maria, her lips moving slightly, wanting to say something, but she realized she had nothing to say. Maria sighed and pressed her lips together. "I'm leaving. You calm down and think things through. After all, it was someone else's family matter. There was only so much she could interfere." Chapter 15. After the door closed, Willow was left alone in the room again. She held the phone tightly, as if it were the last thing keeping her afloat. After hesitating for a long time, she finally dialed her parents' home number. The phone rang for a long while before someone answered. It was her mother. "Mom," Willow had just spoken when her voice broke with tears. There was a brief silence on the other end. Then her father's furious roar exploded through the phone. "You still have the nerve to call home? You've completely disgraced the Liu family." In the background, her mother's voice could be heard trying to calm him. "Old man, let her talk. Let her finish. Talk about what? What else is there to say? Raising such a shameless daughter, my old face has nowhere left to hide." Her father's insults grew harsher with each sentence. Willow held the receiver with trembling hands. Dad, I didn't. Makoto and I really didn't do anything, she said anxiously. We never slept together. Her father shouted. And you still dare to say that? Old Lou. Her mother snatched the phone away, her voice full of exhaustion and disappointment. Willow, tell your mother the truth. Is what your father just said true or not? Willow's voice trembled. I didn't sleep with him. I really didn't. I was just confused for a while. That was her last line of defense, the last piece of dignity she had left. There was a long silence on the other end. After a while, her mother finally spoke, her voice hoarse. What do you plan to do now? I want to go find George, Willow said. I want to apologize to Emma. I want to beg him. Before she could finish, her father interrupted sharply. Don't bother. This time his voice carried complete despair. Willow, listen carefully. Once a man is pushed this far, he won't turn back. Stop humiliating yourself. Sign that agreement and at least leave yourself a little dignity. Her mother suddenly shouted. What nonsense are you saying? Then she spoke quickly. Willow, don't listen to your father. You made the mistake, so you should admit it. Lower your pride and sincerely apologize. Even if you really end up divorcing, you should at least explain everything clearly. Don't let him leave with misunderstandings. And don't let things get worse. The call ended. The house fell into complete silence. Her father's words made her feel like she had fallen into an icy abyss. Her mother's words, however, were like a faint spark lighting up somewhere deep in her heart. Should she go? Or not? Should she sign it? Or refuse? Willow sat on the cold floor, staring at the thin divorce agreement on the coffee table. For the first time in her life, she felt completely lost. She knew this might be her last chance. If she couldn't grasp it, she didn't dare continue the thought. The next afternoon, Willow came to my parents' house. It was an old residential compound where neighbors knew everything about one another. She wore a simple dress, her hair neatly tied back. She had no makeup on, and her eyes were red. Standing at the entrance of the courtyard, she looked fragile enough to evoke sympathy. My mother opened the door. The moment she saw Willow, the faint smile on her face disappeared. She blocked the doorway and didn't let her in. Mom, Willow had barely spoken when her voice choked again. My father heard the noise and walked out of the living room, still holding a palm fan. He stood beside my mother like a mountain. George isn't here, my father said. His voice was deep, revealing neither anger nor warmth. Tears immediately poured down Willow's face. Dad. Mom. I know I was wrong. I really was just confused for a moment. Please let me see Emma. Let me explain everything to George. As she spoke, she tried to squeeze past them into the house. My mother raised her hand and gently blocked her. Willow, she said calmly, if you have something to say it to George. We elders can't interfere in the affairs of you young people. Emma must have heard her mother's voice. She peeked out from behind my mother with a small, hesitant face. Emma. Willow's eyes lit up like she had found a lifeline. She crouched down and tried to grab Emma's hand. Emma, it's Mommy. Mommy came to see you. Emma shrank back and hid behind my mother's legs. Softly, she said, Mommy, please don't be with that bad uncle anymore. Children's words are always the most direct. That bad uncle makes you not come to my parent meetings. Emma continued, and you didn't celebrate my birthday. She counted on her fingers one by one. Grandma said a good mommy wouldn't do that. Chapter 16. Willow remained crouched there, her whole body frozen. Every word Emma said was like a small hammer, light, but striking her heart again and again. Only then did she clearly realize how many things she had missed. The little things she had once considered insignificant had been enormous in her child's eyes. Through her sobs, she said, I was wrong. Emma, Mommy was really wrong. Willow could no longer hold herself together. Her knees buckled, and with a dull thud she fell to her knees on the concrete in the courtyard. Her knees struck the ground with a heavy sound. Dad. Mom, please, I'm begging you. Give me another chance. Makoto and I really didn't do anything. We never crossed that line. There's still time to fix everything. She cried so desperately that several passing neighbors stopped and began whispering to each other from a distance. My father's expression had already darkened to the extreme. Just then, I drove into the alley and turned the corner. At a glance, I saw Willow kneeling at the gate, my parents' embarrassed faces, and my daughter hiding behind her grandmother, looking lost. What a scene! My gaze passed over her and landed beneath the old locust tree at the corner of the alley. A black car was parked there. I recognized the license plate immediately. It belonged to Makoto. He must have thought parking at the gate would be too obvious, so he chose a spot he believed was hidden. So they had come together. I parked the car and got out. When Willow saw me, it was as if she had seen a ray of light. Crying, she tried to crawl toward me. George, listen to my explanation. Get up, I said calmly, frowning slightly. Stop performing here. The neighbors are watching. It's embarrassing. She stared at me blankly. tears still hanging from her eyelashes. Go home, I said, looking at her. I didn't even feel the energy to be angry anymore. The divorce agreement has already been sent to your email by lawyer Alicia. If you want to discuss property division, you can talk to my lawyer. I paused and spoke clearly, word by word. But Emma's custody is not negotiable. Willow struggled to stand up. Her knees were scraped and bleeding, but she ignored the pain and staggered toward me. I shifted my body and stepped aside. She lost her balance and fell heavily onto the concrete beside her, her palms scraping against the ground and leaving several streaks of blood. George. At that moment, a voice I had expected rang out from the corner of the alley. Makoto hurried over and pulled Willow to her feet. You're still a man, he cursed angrily. Willow has already lowered herself this much and even got hurt. And you're still this cold. My parents' faces turned instantly pale with anger. The neighbors' whispers grew even louder. The moment Willow saw Makoto appear, panic filled her face. She understood clearly that the moment Makoto appeared here, everything she had tried to do was pointless. She would never be able to explain anything to her parents now. Ignoring the pain in her hands, she suddenly slapped Makoto across the face. Smack. The slap stunned him. Why did you come here? Willow screamed hysterically through her tears. Did I ask you to come? Coming out like this now, are you trying to destroy me completely? Makoto held his face, disbelief written all over it. Willow, are you crazy? I came here for your sake. For my sake, Willow shouted sharply. Leave. Leave right now. Don't ever appear in front of me again. But Makoto glared at me stubbornly. No, I'm not leaving. George doesn't deserve you treating him like this. Suddenly, I laughed. It was the kind of laugh that came when anger reached its peak. I stepped forward, but Willow rushed in front of Makoto, spreading her arms to shield him. Don't. Chapter 17. At that moment, the courtyard was so quiet that only the sound of the wind could be heard. I stopped walking and looked at her coldly. She froze as well, lowering her head to stare at the arms she had instinctively spread open. Even she seemed unable to believe she had just done that. Nothing could be more convincing than this. Mommy, Emma cried, trying to run out, but my mother held her tightly. This was not something a child should see. Without turning my head, I said, Dad, Mom, take Emma inside. My father walked over, glanced at Willow kneeling on the ground, then at Makoto standing awkwardly to the side. He shook his head. George, don't hit anyone. The neighbors are watching. My mother picked up Emma and said softly, Emma, be good. Come watch TV with Grandma. Emma lay against her shoulder and whispered, Grandma, why is Mommy kneeling? Did Mommy do something wrong? Adult matters aren't for children. My mother replied hurriedly as she carried Emma into the house. Willow heard her daughter's voice and cried even harder. She released my leg and shouted toward the house. Emma, Emma, tell Daddy that Mommy will stay with you from now on. Mommy will never leave you again. The door closed. Only the three of us remained in the courtyard. Willow knelt on the ground, clutching my leg tightly. George, please, give me one more chance. I promise. I really didn't do anything with Makoto. I never slept with him. I swear. I'll take good care of Emma from now on. I'll never. I looked down at her. Finished performing. George, I'm not acting. I'm sincere. Sincere? I pointed at Makoto, who was still standing at the entrance of the alley. Then what is he? How many pieces is your sincerity divided into? Willow followed my gesture. Makoto stood there with the mark of her slap still on his face, his eyes full of anger and resentment. She bit her lip. I'll make him leave. I'll make him leave right now. Struggling to her feet, Willow ran toward Makoto. I didn't stop her. I simply watched quietly. In truth, even if Makoto hadn't appeared today, she was already sentenced in my mind. And now that he had appeared, there was nothing left to say. I remembered the phone call from her parents the night before. They had told me Willow had completely cut ties with Makoto. They begged me to talk with her properly. Even if we divorced, they said, we should at least clarify everything. But now, it was clear, there was no need. Since she couldn't obtain my forgiveness, Willow began what could only be described as a relentless pursuit. On my way to work, her car would suddenly appear from a corner and block mine. After work, she would wait downstairs outside my company for hours. She even started arriving early at Emma's kindergarten to intercept us. George, can you just listen to me finish? She said one day, blocking my path, her eyes swollen from crying. I promise, this is the last time. I rubbed the bridge of my nose. You say that every time. I walked past her. Makoto has already been fired. She shouted behind me. I reported him. I exposed all his illegal practices at the clinic. He might even lose his medical license now. I stopped walking and turned back to look at her. I've cut him off completely, Willow said. Her eyes shone with a nearly manic intensity. To prove it to you, I destroyed him. Don't you believe my determination now? I shrugged. When we got married, I said calmly, you also made vows at the wedding. You promised to keep your word, did you? Willow opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. Let's part peacefully, I said before turning away again. Don't make things uglier than they already are. But she refused to give up. The divorce agreement had been with her for 3 months. She simply wouldn't sign it. Every time my lawyer Alicia urged her, she came up with a new excuse. One day she said she needed more time to think. The next day she insisted she needed to speak with me face to face. Another day she claimed the child was too young to grow up without a mother. Finally, Alicia sighed helplessly over the phone. She insists she never had a physical relationship with Makoto, and that things haven't reached the point of no return. George, it looks like we'll have to proceed with litigation. Chapter 18. I remained silent for a long time. A litigation divorce meant that every ugly detail would have to be laid out in court, explained one by one in front of the judge and the court clerk. There was nothing honorable about that for anyone. Alicia's voice softened on the phone. I know you don't want to take this to court, but if she refuses to sign and you can't get past it yourself, the only way to move forward is this. All right, I said finally. Prepare the documents. In court, I presented the evidence one by one, not only photos and videos, but also chat records. Those chat logs had been sent to me by Makoto himself. After Willow reported him and he realized his medical license was likely finished, he decided to go all in. He sent me everything, hoping it would guarantee that Willow and I divorced. At that point, the marriage was already doomed, so it didn't matter anymore. This, I said, is 500,000 yuan that the defendant withdrew from our joint family account for the third party, Makoto. I handed the bank statements to the judge. 300,000 of it was used to fund Makoto's private clinic. She never discussed this with me. The remaining 200,000 was spent on their dining, entertainment, and leisure. Willow sat at the defendant's table, her face deathly pale. I didn't notice any of this before. I continued. Recently, when I tried to pay my daughter's tuition and extracurricular fees, the card declined. That's when I discovered the account had been emptied. These are indisputable records. The judge flipped through the bank statements, frowning deeply. I continued. Also, from the time my daughter was born until now, I have been the one primarily responsible for raising her. I placed a thick stack of documents on the table. Here are testimonies from her kindergarten teachers, medical records from hospital visits, and statements from neighbors. Because Ms. Willow Lu was busy meeting the third party, she rarely returned home, let alone took care of the child. Willow's lawyer attempted to argue back, but the evidence left little room for defense. He said, Your Honor, my client admits that during the marriage she had inappropriate contact with Mr. Makoto. However, she firmly denies having had a physical extramarital relationship. Physical? I let out a cold laugh. Is 500,000 yuan not physical enough? Willow was crying uncontrollably in the defendant's seat, tears streaming down her face, not even bothering to wipe her nose. Your Honor, I know I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. She stood up with her hands clasped together. Please give me one last chance. I promise I'll live properly from now on. I will never make this kind of mistake again. The judge frowned, looking from her to me. George, please, Willow cried, turning toward me. For Emma's sake, can we start over? Her eyes were swollen red like peaches. I can write a guarantee letter. I can swear, if I ever do this again, I'll smash my head against the wall. In the audience seats, several older women whispered to each other. She looks pretty pitiful, crying like that. Another voice replied. What's pitiful about it? She cheated. The judge struck the gavel. Order. The defendant will sit down. But Willow refused. She knelt right there in the courtroom. Your Honor, Makoto and I truly never had a physical relationship. We were just a little emotionally involved. I was confused for a moment, but I never betrayed the essence of my marriage. Her crying grew louder and harsher until her voice cracked. If you rule for divorce, I'll have no way to live. I'll smash my head right here. Suddenly she stood up and lunged toward the wall as if to crash into it. Gasps rose from the audience. The court clerk rushed forward to stop her. The judge rubbed his temples and glanced at the clock. Court is adjourned. We will reconvene in 15 minutes. The recess ended up lasting nearly an hour. The judge summoned me alone to the mediation room. Mr. Wang, he said patiently, I understand you're angry, but after all, you were husband and wife, and the child is still young. Ms. Lu did not have a physical affair with the third party. If she sincerely regrets her actions, I smiled slightly. Your Honor, you're a man too. Tell me honestly, if a woman takes her husband's money and spends it on another man, how many men could tolerate that? I interrupted him gently. That was 500,000 yuan. She handed it to someone else without even blinking. The judge sighed. But she truly realizes her mistake now. Realizes her mistake. I laughed coldly. If she truly realized it, she would have signed the agreement 3 months ago, not waited until we reached the courtroom to start acting pitiful. Chapter 19. Seeing how firm my attitude was, the judge had no choice but to go persuade Willow again. An experienced senior female judge, unable to watch the situation any longer, followed him into the mediation room. She talked with Willow there for a long time. Willow cried so hard inside that I could hear her sobbing even from outside. "Ms. Liu," the judge said gently, "it's good that you recognize your mistake and want to make amends. But since this relationship has already broken down, the first step is to let it end." Willow lifted her head, her eyes swollen with tears. The judge continued, "Once this failed relationship ends, you can start again. You can try to win your husband and daughter back. With your daughter there, you still have a connection. You will definitely have visitation rights. There will still be chances to repair the relationship." But Willow tried to speak. The judge shook her head softly. "Think about it. Continuing to struggle like this helps no one. Instead of making both of you miserable, it's better to end this wrong relationship and welcome a new beginning." Willow remained silent for a long time. Half an hour later, the female judge came out of the mediation room. Her face looked tired. "Mr. Wang, I've spoken with her." Sigh. When the court session resumed, Willow's eyes were swollen from crying, but her expression had calmed down. The judge asked, "Defendant, do you have anything further to say?" Willow stood up slowly, her voice hoarse. "Your Honor, I agree to the divorce." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even Willow's lawyer looked stunned. "I did make mistakes," Willow continued. "I hurt my family." She looked at me. Tears began to fall again, but this time she didn't cry or shout. "George, I'm sorry." She paused, her voice soft. "I have no objection to Emma's custody being given to you, but I hope to have visitation rights. After all, I'm still her mother." I looked at her, my emotions mixed. Was this really the Willow I once knew? The judge let out a small breath of relief. "Since both parties agree to the divorce, we will now finalize the division of property and the child custody arrangements." By the time the entire process was finished, it was already 4 in the afternoon. When I walked out of the courthouse, I suddenly felt lighter, as if a heavy burden had finally been lifted from my shoulders. Willow followed behind me and asked quietly, "George, when can I see Emma?" Without turning around, I answered, "Every Saturday from 2 to 5 in the afternoon, at my parents' house." "Okay," she said softly. "Thank you." I didn't look back. I walked straight toward the parking lot. That marriage was finally over. After the divorce, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Willow really had cut Makoto off completely. Once, when Makoto tried to approach her again, she actually stabbed him with a knife and screamed that he had ruined her life. The incident caused quite a scandal. Her parents had to spend a great deal of money and pull many connections to suppress the matter. As for me, I focused entirely on my career. I bought a new car, a new house, but before long, I began to notice that every evening after work, Willow would be waiting downstairs with a thermos container in her hands. "George, I made soup for you," she said cautiously. "It's your favorite." I took the thermos but didn't say anything. The soup really was my favorite. Willow had always been a good cook. "Dad, Mom made soup." Emma leaned forward from the back seat, her eyes lighting up. Willow quickly stepped closer. "Emma, sweetheart. Mommy missed you." Whenever I picked up my daughter, Willow would stand nearby watching quietly. If Emma called for her, Willow would step forward and hold her, comforting her gently. Sometimes Emma would pout and say she wanted to go home with Mommy. Willow would lower her eyes, her voice trembling. "Emma has to listen to Daddy. Mommy can't take you home." During holidays, she even came to visit my parents. Her attitude was humble, almost submissive. Chapter 20. On the day of the Mid-Autumn Festival, she knocked on the door holding a large box of mooncakes. When my mother opened the door and saw her, her expression was complicated. "Mom, I bought these mooncakes. Please try some," Willow said, bending slightly, her voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz. My father put down the newspaper in his hands. "Willow, come in and sit for a while." "No, Dad," she replied quietly. "I just came to see you." Her eyes were red as she asked softly, "Is Emma home? I'd like to see her." That day Emma was doing her homework. When she saw her mother, she dropped her pen and ran straight into Willow's arms. Willow held her tightly. Tears dripped down her face, but she forced a smile and tried to make Emma laugh. She did these things without fail, no matter the weather. Even my parents were eventually moved by her persistence. One day my mother sat down with me and said, "George, Willow really knows she was wrong. Look at how obedient she is now." My father supported her from the side. "Everyone makes mistakes. Now that she's trying so hard to change, maybe you should give her another chance." I shook my head. "Dad, Mom, some things aren't that simple." My mother sighed. "But she's already done this much for you. Even when it rains every day, she still waits downstairs. Watching her like that makes my heart ache." Willow was indeed persistent. Once, during a heavy rainstorm, I saw her standing downstairs when I got off work. She was soaked from head to toe, still holding a thermos container in her hands. I intended to pretend I hadn't seen her, but Emma leaned against the car window and shouted, "Mom, Mom is getting wet." At that moment, my heart did waver a little, but reason quickly suppressed it. I knew she was trying to atone for her mistakes, but the feelings inside me were already gone. The lies, the 500,000 yuan, and the instinctive way she had shielded him. All of it remained in my mind like nails hammered into wood. Even if you pull the nails out, the holes are still there. That failed marriage destroyed my faith in love and marriage. Once, we had been so happy together, so sweet, but it hadn't survived the tests of time and human nature. No matter how many explanations there were, I simply couldn't cross that line in my heart. Sometimes I would think, if only time could turn back, but reality has no if, only results. Eventually, I found a chance to speak clearly with Willow. I told her there was no possibility between us anymore and that she shouldn't keep waiting for me. She said, "George, I'm not asking to remarry, I just want you to forgive me." Standing downstairs, tears slid down her cheeks. "I know I made an unforgivable mistake, but I've really changed. Whether you've changed or not has nothing to do with me," I replied calmly. "We're already over. You should find your own life instead of wasting it on me. My life is you and Emma," she said through tears. "I've thought about it a lot these past years. What I destroyed wasn't just a marriage, it was the future of the three of us." I said nothing more and turned to go upstairs, but Willow simply cried quietly. And the next day, she came again. Every day after that, it was the same. In the end, I stopped trying to stop her. If she wanted to live like that, it was her choice. I focused entirely on my career, and on raising my daughter. When Emma started elementary school, Willow never missed a single day picking her up or dropping her off. At parent meetings, she would sit quietly in the last row, listening the entire time. When Emma received an award certificate, Willow applauded harder than anyone, her eyes red with emotion. "Dad," Emma once asked me, "why can't Mom come home?" I gently rubbed her head. "Mom made a mistake. She needs time to face it. You just need to study hard. When you grow up, you'll understand." Chapter 21. My daughter grew up little by little. Elementary school, middle school, high school, then university. With every passing year, her face looked more and more like Willow's when she was young. Sometimes when I looked at her, I would be momentarily dazed, as if I were seeing the shy Willow from 20 years ago. At every important moment in Emma's life afterward, Willow was always there, but she never crossed the line. She would stand at a distance, quietly watching and offering her silent support. As for me, I gradually became a typical middle-aged man, graying temples, a growing belly. My parents had grown very old too, though thankfully they were still healthy. My father-in-law passed away 2 years ago. I attended the funeral. That day Willow wore plain black clothes. She had grown painfully thin, her eye sockets sunken, completely losing the beauty she once had. After the funeral, she brought my mother-in-law to live with her. The year Emma graduated from university, she asked me a question. "Dad, don't you think Mom still loves you?" "Whether she loves me or not is already in the past," I sighed. "In this lifetime, if I can simply do the things I'm supposed to do without failing them, that's enough." Eventually, my daughter started dating someone. He was a good young man from a decent family. 2 years later they announced they were getting married. She asked me cautiously, "Dad, could Mom come to the wedding?" I froze for a long time, looking at the hopeful expression in my daughter's eyes. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Really?" Emma jumped up excitedly. "Dad, thank you." I knew that my daughter had actually forgiven her mother long ago. My parents had also persuaded me many times. They said Willow had never remarried all these years, and they had witnessed her efforts. Once my mother told me, "Willow has been waiting for this day for 20 years. George, it's time for you to let go." But only I knew, I could never forgive her. Those things had stayed inside my heart all these years. They haunted me, often keeping me awake at night. As for Willow, she had lived in regret for so long that she aged quickly. Her hair had turned gray, her back had become slightly hunched. She looked 10 years older than her real age. When she heard that I had agreed to let her attend Emma's wedding, she cried with overwhelming joy. She hugged Emma, who had come to personally deliver the wedding invitation, and wept for a long time. "Mom, stop crying. Your makeup is all smudged," Emma said gently while wiping her tears. Willow's voice trembled as she spoke. "Mom is happy, so happy. For 20 years, this is the day I've been waiting for." I stood outside the door listening, my emotions complicated. 20 years, how many 20-year spans can a person have in a lifetime? Time can change many things, and many people, but the yardstick used to judge right and wrong may not necessarily shift along with time.